What's up, Candy Ken? What's up, Baby J? How's it going?
Not today.
Candy Ken and Baby J.
It's Candy Ken.
Welcome to the Candy Ken Show.
Eddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Man, I'm very, you've been one of the most fascinating people online. I think very mysterious. I love like your logo, like everything, the whole, like what you say. It's crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah. How would you describe yourself? Or
In basic, I'm an author and documenter, but I'm also just a multifaceted artist. I've been making art since I was a kid. I've been writing since I was a kid, but as of lately, I've been an author and a documenter. I've been working under the brand Esoteric Eddie for the past 2 years. So I've written 3 books, and I've produced countless pieces of content and documentaries, like full-length documentaries on my YouTube channel, all within those 2 years. But prior to those 2 years, I had done a lot of different things as an artist, as a music artist as well, and a writer and stuff like that.
amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I haven't got a chance to read your books. I listened to the podcasts that are online of you, your TikTok, your Instagram. Maybe you can tell me about your books.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely, man. I'm here to spread some knowledge on religion, government, and consciousness, and I've always been about that, spreading knowledge and trying to elevate people. But my books, the one that got me popular, which is technically my first book, was the Lucifer Mystery Revealed. And that book is pretty much going over the historicity of Lucifer and how Lucifer never actually existed in the Bible. And it's a subject that I wanted to do at that time simply because it's provocative, and it's something that affected me as a young person, because growing up, I always believed the devil was real and he was out to get me and all these different things. And it was crazy. It played a huge role in my upbringing. I thought that like demons were real, and I still believe in that stuff to a certain extent. I just view it differently. And I started writing that book a little bit before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened and everything changed, and it gave me that moment to sit down and really write it. But basically, my first 2 books, the Lucifer Mystery Revealed and the Anunnaki Theorem, are about religion, ancient religion, and how they formed and how they basically were formed to control us by certain narratives. So, for example, again, in my first book, I pretty much demonstrate how Lucifer never existed and the importance behind that. So when I say Lucifer never existed, I mean that we mistranslated the Hebrew text, and primarily mistranslated the book of Isaiah, because Lucifer is only mentioned in one part of the Bible in the Old Testament, and it's mentioned in Isaiah 14:12, the famous, "O Lucifer, how art thou fallen" verse. But Isaiah was never speaking about a Lucifer character. He was actually referencing an old Canaanite mythology. And the Canaanite mythology was that preceded the Israelites, the Jews. And so Isaiah was using a metaphor from this Canaanite mythology, referring to the Babylonian kings. He was basically just saying like, oh, you guys think you're important or whatever, but you're not. This is what he was doing. And so the early Christians read that text, mistranslated it, and created this character, Lucifer, out of it. But they didn't understand the cultural context behind it. And the reason that's important to me is because it just shows how, as humans, we misunderstand things all the time, and we make a big mess out of our understanding. Here we are, on the verge of World War III, and a lot of it's because of our differences as people having to do with religion. But what's also important about the whole Lucifer thing to me is that although Lucifer never existed in the Bible, there is a character in history that does resemble a Lucifer character that was sort of wiped out of human mythology and history. And that character is a Sumerian god by the name of Enki. Because Christians, they'll always couple Lucifer with the serpent in the Garden of Eden, right? They always say, like, the story of Lucifer is he was God's right-hand angel, and then he fell, and then he's Satan now, or whatever. That story is not in the Bible. That story was put together through all these different little stories in the Old Testament and New Testament to create this archetype. But the Garden of Eden story, that part of the archetype is interesting because that person, that being known as the Nakash in the Old Testament, which means serpent, was based on a Sumerian god, the Sumerians being the oldest civilization, and that god was Enki. And Enki was always represented by the symbol of a serpent or snake. And he was also always known as the god of wisdom. And both in the Sumerian tales and in the Old Testament, Enki was always interested in giving us knowledge, interested in giving us, different perspectives on consciousness. And so that person in the Garden of Eden story, I believe, and many other Assyriologists believe, was actually a rendition of the Sumerian god Enki. And so if there ever was a Lucifer, it was the Sumerian god Enki. And that's important because the entire Sumerian mythology of these beings, the Anunnaki, was slowly wiped out and forgotten throughout history, especially with the onset of monotheism. And monotheism meaning the belief in one God. And so my books and my work, when it comes to religion, attempts to demonstrate how these old mythologies that had to do with these different gods were slowly phased out so that monotheism can take hold. And what monotheism did was centralized everything. It centralized government, it centralized religion, and it centralized power. And that has continued on. That trend has continued on. It started with Judaism. And we are told in the Bible itself that the reason monotheism was created was to centralize power, because the Jews were held captive by the Babylonians. And this is true. This is true in history. It's called the Babylonian captivity. And so after the Babylonians were held captive, after they were freed by the Persians, they realized that they had to come up with a system to become stronger and unified. And the Bible tells us that the prophets Nehemiah and Ezra were told and given permission by the Persian Empire to go back to their people and create a law to keep their people in check. And that law was the Torah, the Old Testament. And so at that time, the Jews were worshiping the Anunnaki. They were worshiping these other gods. But then they were told by their elite that they had to stop doing that, and that they had to worship one God, and that the rabbi, the institution of religion, was now going to mediate that. And so that was the first time in human history, basically, where the idea of like a one world government was starting to form, and through religion. Because prior to that, Babylon tried to attempt that and everything, but it was mostly through politics. And so Judaism was born, monotheism was born, and the controlling of people through institutional religion was born. And then later on, Christianity took that blueprint and did the same thing. Because in the Roman Empire, the people were worshiping all the different Roman and Greek gods in the same way that the early Israelites were worshiping all of the Canaanite gods, the Anunnaki gods. And then Rome decided to nullify all of that, do away with all of that and institute Christianity. And again, say there's only one God and there's going to be one government and there's going to be one church and we're going to control all of this. And so slowly over time, all of the old Canaanite, Sumerian, Babylonian mythologies of the Anunnaki were phased out. And then we were given monotheism. But the truth is, all of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, are based off of the Anunnaki mythologies. Are you familiar with the Anunnaki? Mm-hmm. No? All right. So have you seen the Ancient Alien TV show?
No.
No? All right. I know you're a fan of Joe Rogan, though, right? Yeah. And Joe Rogan, he knows about this stuff, and he's mentioned it on his podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
I know that he's a fan or was a fan of Zecharia Sitchin. And Zecharia Sitchin was an author who passed away in 2010 at like 90 years old. Mm-hmm. And Zecharia Sitchin is responsible for the Anunnaki theory. And so without his work, there would be no Ancient Alien TV show. And I'm surprised you don't know about it. It's like a really big show on the History Channel. It's been going on for like 15 seasons now. And basically the whole Ancient Alien theory states that in our ancient past, some ancient astronauts or extraterrestrials came here and gave us technology and consciousness. That's the basic of the theory. And that theory was first proposed by Zecharia Sitchin. He wrote a series of books starting in the 1970s about these beings. And he got that idea or concept from our ancestorial texts coming out of Sumer and Babylon. Because as it stands right now, humanity is only about 7,000 years old, right? Or so we're told. That's what we're told. And that's crazy to think about. You know, that everything we know is only 7,000 years old. That's like 70 generations of people, maybe, or something, right? But we know that that's not true now because we've found places like Göbekli Tepe that go back like 12 to 14,000 years old, and all these different strange human settlements that go way back, way further than 7,000 years old. But the oldest civilization that we know of, sophisticated civilization that we know of, is that of the Sumerians, which are about 7,000 years old. And so when we've uncovered their text and we've and have translated their texts, we found these like strange stories. And our ancestors, the Sumerians, told us that there was these gods called the Anunnaki, and that these Anunnaki created us. We are told explicitly in these texts that they created us through some kind of science experiment of taking what they called clay and their blood and fusing it to create us. And we are also told in the Sumerian text, these physical clay tablets, that they created us to be their slaves, to be their workers. And this is the first story we are told by our ancestors. And this story is retold in the Bible, in the Old Testament. I don't know if you're familiar with Christianity or the Old Testament. Did you grow up reading the Bible at all? Or?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Are you religious?
Well, not by the... I always have a problem with like what humans tell you religion is. I would consider myself very religious, but not... I don't always want to buy into somebody. It seems like there's somebody benefiting of how it's written, and there's always, like how you say, like a lot of mistranslation or on purposely mistranslated things to benefit whoever wrote it. So if a human wrote the story of Jesus or other Bible texts, then it seems like, I think Joe Rogan talked about that too, that it always benefits the person that wrote it. It's like how in history, always the winners write what happened. So it's never really the truth. And I really like when Kanye said, like, stop teaching history and like teach what's happening right now or what we know to be true. Because I have a problem when people especially with this with the devil and hell, when people like my mother-in-law use it against me, that like if I do this and that you'll go to hell. So now a human abuses religion for their ways to tell me what to do. I have a problem with that, because I feel like there's people really get off on the devil.
Yeah.
And especially when I look in LA and all the horror movies and like I see The Grudge, there's like crazy religious things happening and people love watching it and like fantasize about the devil and worship the devil. Or when I look at the Doja Cat's new album, also like you looking like the devil or putting horns on your head, and there's like this 666 and like there's all like these like things where people love to dress as the devil and like use that against people to get some sort of power. So I would not really consider myself like the traditional belief, but I do. There's too much that I cannot describe or have answers for.
Yeah.
So there has to be some sort of higher power. And you can call it religion, you can call that the universe, you can call it mushrooms. But I feel like you feel the same way, right?
Yeah, I'm basically the same. Yeah, I grew up in a Christian and Catholic home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty familiar with the Bible and the institution of religion. And now, having done all the work that I have to actually analyze the origins of these things, I have like a way different perspective. And it's put me in a weird place because it's like, I want to believe in God. I want to believe in Jesus Christ. But I also have like this academic perspective on it all. And I can see the errors in how all this stuff was created and concocted by human minds. But yeah, no, you said a lot right there that I want to touch on. But real quick, getting back to the Anunnaki thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, we were told by our Sumerian ancestors that we were created by these beings through some weird science experiment to be their workers. And that's reflected in the Old Testament. The Old Testament tells us in Genesis 1:26 that we were created by these beings by the name of the Elohim. If you go to any English Bible and you open up to Genesis 1:26, you will read, "And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness." And there's plurality there. And if you ask any theologian why there's plurality there, they'll give you some runaround answer. But the reason there's plurality there is because the word that was used was not God. The word that was used was Elohim. And Elohim is a plural word that means basically the powerful ones. So now we're reading in the Old Testament, the powerful ones made man in their image. And so this was the Israelites, the early Israelites, just retelling the same story that their ancestors had told them. But we, as arrogant Hellenistic Jews and Christians, right, during the last few centuries of BC and the first couple centuries of the Common Era, right, we as Hellenistic Jews and Christians, we were reading this stuff, not understanding that cultural context, because the Babylonians, the Sumerians, Akkadians were already buried underneath the sand. And so we didn't have that same cultural connection as the early Israelites did, but they understood their Sumerian ancestor history and just simply rewrote it. And so that whole history is gone, and now it's masked and disguised in monotheism. And again, I think that's important because we're told by the church that, we have to give money and we have to do all these different things. And if we don't do this or that, we're going to go to hell. And so the church has stepped in to be mediators. And it's unfortunate because the entire institution of church is flawed. It's a facade because it's based on these mythologies, these Anunnaki mythologies. And so when we understand that as people, as humans, then we kind of have to ask ourselves, okay, well, if religion is a facade, then where does that leave us? Because we're still here, right? Something created us. We're still here. And so getting to hell, right? We're told that, if we're bad people, we're going to go to hell. That's an interesting thing too, and I just did a dive on this on my channel. Hell never really existed in the Bible either. It goes back to the word. So hell, first of all, the Jews never believed in hell. The Israelites never believed in hell. They believed in Sheol. So they believe basically that when you die, you just disappear. They believe that you just go back to the dirt. And that's why there was a common theme of that in the Old Testament. Like my favorite Old Testament book is Ecclesiastes by King Solomon. And that's where we get the famous saying, from dust we came and from dust we shall return. Dust in the wind. So the Jews, they just believed you just go back to the wind, just go back to the earth, because they were told that they were made from the earth. God made Adam out of clay. But it was the Christians that started to formulate this idea of hell. But Jesus never said that we would be punished forever. He said that we would be destroyed forever, which is pretty wild. But he never used the word hell. That's a Greek word. He always used the word Gehenna whenever he referred to the afterlife, of hell. And Gehenna was a specific valley in Israel where the ancient Israelites or pre-Israelites used to worship the god Moloch through child sacrifice. They would throw their children in a fire. It was crazy. And I did a whole dive on that too. And the Bible talks about that. God condemns the people for doing that and gets them to stop doing that. But Gehenna was this valley where people would go throw their babies in fire, and adults sometimes too. And so Jesus would say to the sinners that, the afterlife for you is going to be like Gehenna. It's going to be Gehenna for you, and you shall be destroyed forever, not punished forever. So in other words, the sinners in Jesus's mind their souls, their essence, their consciousness would just be eliminated, would be annihilated. And I think he was using Gehenna as a metaphor. I don't think there's really a fire. I think that source, right? Source, whatever source is, the source of everything, is this unfathomable light. This unfathomable light that our souls come from and pass back through eventually. And so the sinners, for whatever reason, we're going to be thrown back into source, back into this unfathomable light that is like the fire of Gehenna, and be annihilated forever, rather than punished forever with whips and chains and weird stuff, kinky things. But yeah, man, so it's like, it's wild, right? We've only been here for 7,000 years. And so they say, but for the first 4,000 years, we were worshiping the Anunnaki gods, these beings who we were told created us, who Zecharia Sitchin and Ancient Aliens tells us were extraterrestrial astronauts from planet Nibiru that came here and genetically engineered us. For the first 4,000 years, we were worshiping those beings. And then the Jews created monotheism and then phased that out. And I think that's important to understand because, again, as of today, the Abrahamic faiths kind of run the world. What's going on in the Middle East right now is somewhat centered around religion. And here in America, we view ourselves as the Christian nation, the Christian army, and the Iraq war, most of it was fueled on this idea of a holy war. I did a dive on that as well in my Anunnaki Theorem book. And I found, after doing some research, that about like half of the funding that went into that war, the Iraq war, came from fundamentalist Christians who believed that we were fighting some holy war. They thought that we were on Jesus' side and that the Middle East was on Satan's side or whatever. It's just this crazy human nonsense of us thinking that, we're on this God's side and they're on that God's side. And that has always been the case. That has always been our flawed habit. Going all the way back to the Sumerians. The Sumerians did the same thing. They were fighting for this Anunnaki god against this Anunnaki god. So we've always just been fighting in the name of our God. So the whole thing is a facade. I mean, and it's exhausting, It's exhausting because the people at the very top, they don't really believe in any of this stuff. They're using it. They're playing us for fools. Like, this is a holy war. We need to go fight for their freedom and in the name of God. And it sucks, because it fuels all of that. But again, once we understand that it's all a facade, it's all mythology based on all this crazy human error and human stories and legends, it still leaves us with the fact that we're here, right? We're here and we have an existence to deal with. So how do we go about that if we're not going to go about it with these religions? And so I guess that's when spirituality comes into play, right? It's like we have to find these different systems to still keep us moral and keep us grounded. And with that, transitioning away from religion, then we have the secular world to deal with. How do we deal with this crazy political secular world, knowing that religion is a facade and knowing that the people in power are using that to control us? And I think it all starts with realizing these things first, slowly having these awakenings and being mature about it. I don't think it's for everybody, right? Some people can't handle this. Like, I would never just go tell my grandma all this stuff. Like, hey, grandma, God isn't real. Hell isn't real. Because some people, that's what they need in order to function.
They say not knowing or ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just, I think it's the hardest thing for most people. Like you said, it's not for everybody, because you don't want to be told that everything is a lie. You don't want to open that lid. You don't want to question everything because it's exhausting. You know, when, I don't know if you're familiar with Kennedy Jr.
Oh yeah.
But he wrote the truth about Fauci, and his wife didn't read the book because she don't want to, she cannot, it's too dark. It is to know that pharmaceutical companies not have your health in interest, and that, you know, it's just so dark that a lot of people don't want to go there. They rather live in this lie. They don't want to look into like food and health and your body and the government and politics, and that everything seems to be against you. The more I look into it, the more I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. You know, you started one thing, and before you know it, you can't go out to restaurants, you can't listen to news, you cannot listen to this, and everything they've told you is wrong, and they abuse their powers wherever they can. So it's exhausting, and you need to be very brave to be awakened.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think it's definitely not for everybody, but these kind of podcasts, I think you can really target people that are interested, because otherwise you're not going to listen to 2 hours anyways. So once you dive into the podcast, I think you get that crowd that is like hungry for information. They're hungry for the truth. They don't want to be lied to anymore. And I think COVID really catalyzed that. Like, since COVID, there's been a huge push on, now I really gotta find out what's happening, because otherwise there's gonna be a freaking needle in my arm, and you don't know what's in it, and they won't tell you, and the studies are all rigged. So you really gotta do your research now. It really forced, I think it was like the best thing for a lot of people. Didn't only give you time to really center on what you want to do, but also like it made me start a family. It made me really prioritize what I want to do in my life. It made me really think about my health, and like that maybe it's not true that they have the best interest, and that there's some sort of narrative. And if you go through history, you can see that there's so much beautiful things about religion.
Oh yeah.
But there's also so much man abuse. And sometimes I wonder, have you heard of the Tower of Babylon?
Oh yeah.
So I wonder, religion always has been abused for war. Always. It's always, it's Muslims against Christians, and Christians against Jews, and Jews against, you name it. Right?
Yeah. Oh,
besides like Buddhists.
Well, hey, they're pretty aggressive too, but for good reasons.
Yeah, but then I wonder, like, the Tower of Babylon said we all spoke one language, and then we built a tower to God, and then he destroyed it and gave everybody their languages. So when I look at America, I feel like since everybody lost their belief here, now we just find, either we find race, or we find pronouns, sexuality. There's always something to fight about.
Yeah,
I feel like it doesn't really, just because like when you said like let's make one religion.
Yeah.
If everybody had the same religion, we'll just find something else, or the elite find something else to distract us with keeping us isolated and separating us. So either it's you guys are Christian, you guys are Jews, or they're gonna tell you you're black, you're white, or if that doesn't work, you're male, you're female, and if that doesn't work, then let's give everybody pronouns so you're like as diverse as possible, kind of.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, dude. That's what they've always been trying to do, is just keep us distracted. I was just thinking about something you said. I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, no, man, it's like,
because like as long as we're like busy with each other, fighting each other, you know, as long as the Palestinians are busy fighting the Israelis, nobody actually is like, hey, maybe they're using us to get more power and to scare people. You know, as long as the black fight the white, nobody's like, hey, maybe they're all becoming billionaires with injecting us with boosters. You know, like as long as we're busy being like, hey, I'm a man and you're a woman and you have no rights and you don't get to vote, we're not questioning what you're actually voting for. We're so busy being like, oh my God, gays need to get married, That we're like, what about the whole institution? Like, what are we actually doing? Like, what is the narrative? Why do like females now have to pay taxes too? Why do they try to destroy the American family? You know, like instead of like being like, hey, like we need to work together on this. We're like, no, I am LG and you're BT and like you're he, she, and like we're not one. We don't fight together. We're busy.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm a BLT, man. Bacon, lettuce, tomato. No, man, but you're right, dude. And again, that's actually why this whole Anunnaki thing is important. This is why it's important realizing that the Abrahamic faiths are a sort of facade based on these Anunnaki myths, because these Anunnaki myths kind of put a whole new perspective on who and what we are and what these elites' intentions with us is and are. Because, again, we were told by our ancestors that we were created to be slaves, to be workers. And the Bible reflects that when it says that man was made to till the ground, to work. And that's what we all do. We all go to school to learn how to work and then just get thrown in the 9-to-5 grind machine, to work. And the Bible, it's crazy, man. Most people overlook this, right? So God slips up in the Old Testament and reveals his true intentions with us after we become consciously aware. In Genesis, after we eat the forbidden fruit, after the Nakash, the serpent, Enki, gives us knowledge or consciousness, God says in the Bible, now they have become like one of us to know good and evil. One of us, again, meaning Elohim, God's like, oh man, now they've become like one of us. Like, damn, like this sucks. Like we've given them too much knowledge. And then after that, God says, let us not have them take from the tree of immortality. Basically, he says, they've taken from the tree of knowledge, but let's not let them take from the tree of immortality. It's like, why, dude? You don't want us to live long? Like, so God's intention was revealed right there, whoever God was in the Old Testament, right? He didn't want us to be conscious. He's bummed out about it. And he didn't want us to live forever. So again, that story is a retelling of the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki creating us simply to be slaves. They didn't want us to be conscious and start asking for rights and protesting and all these things. But here we are again in the modern world, becoming more conscious, becoming self-aware as people and as a community. And it's the same thing. They're trying to like suppress that and say, no, like you guys just focus on your news and your food and your entertainment. It's like just trying to keep us as cattle. And that's what they're trying to stop, man, is because as many people in the spiritual spaces are concluding, we're coming to an awakening as a whole. Something's happening that's causing a shift, whether that's spiritual or just secular. Because right now, I believe that we live in the age of entrepreneurship. Never before has it been this easy to be independent and sovereign as a person. You can start businesses, dude. You can start business. You can own property. You can start communities. You can make a living off of what you love. So we're crumbling the old way of mainstream media and all that stuff. And they're trying to stop that, but they can't. It's out of their hands. So they got to find these other little ways to like keep us suppressed and also murder hundreds of thousands of innocent people through like wars and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, after the wars, as you were saying, the corporatocracy benefits. All these companies like BlackRock, Raytheon end up coming into these war-torn countries and start benefiting off of rebuilding them. And when they rebuild them, they're going to rebuild them with the new integrated AI technology that's going to be smart cities and stuff like that. So it sucks, man. It's like, but it's a reality we have to accept and deal with and find ways to navigate through. And with that being said, we could talk about my latest book, my third book, The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, which kind of takes those ideas, religion and politics, and then analyzes them through the question of consciousness. What is consciousness? What is this that we live in, right? Because politics and religion, those are just man-made things. Those are the plight of man. Those are just the things that we made to make our own lives harder than they have to be. But as I was saying, outside of those things, outside of religion, outside of politics, there still exists a universe. Do you think the universe cares about our politics, cares about our religion? No, man. Whatever the creator really is, whoever or whatever the creator really is, supersedes what any person could conceive it to be. Right? So that's what I'm saying. We still have to deal with being here. We still have to deal with this universe and how amazing and miraculous it is outside of politics and religion. And so my third book kind of analyzes consciousness and what it is and how we can tap into that power to navigate this crazy life. But again, just like politics and religion, we have always been taught a certain narrative about the mind and the body that kind of has limited us. So mainstream science has always told us that consciousness, our mind, our self, is produced in the brain. That's what mainstream science will tell you. Oh, there's no such thing as consciousness. It's just the brain producing this illusion of consciousness. So there's about 4 or 5 main theories of consciousness, and all of them basically just state that consciousness is an illusion made up of all the different senses working at the same time, producing an illusion of a 360 experience. So that's what we're told by mainstream science. Consciousness is an illusion that's produced by all the senses happening at once within the brain. But if that were true, then we would all just be the same. We would all just be robots. We wouldn't be any different. And so that definition to me only explains the consciousness of lower life forms like flies or something that just buzzes around and just eats and sleeps and dies. You know, that's not what we are. And over the decades, scientists have started to realize that that definition is false, that actually doesn't explain consciousness. And a lot of new studies have been coming out as of recently that state that consciousness, the mind, whatever it is, isn't happening in the brain. It's happening with the brain. It's entering the brain and using the brain as an interface to toggle in this reality. And
is that what they say when they mean God is talking through me? Or sometimes you feel like, I had somebody on, you should listen to this too, Z. He said when he writes a song, he doesn't write it. He just, it comes through him.
Yes.
Sometimes when I have an idea, I wonder, like, you feel like you don't have the idea, or I don't make the choice to do a podcast. I can either reject the idea or I can let it happen through me.
Yeah.
You know, because people are like, or probably ask you too, like, why do you put yourself out there? Why don't you just go back and live a normal life? And like, you're a target, and like, it's very provocative, and you're going deep into like conspiracy or truth, whatever you want to call it, because it's like a made up term by the CIA anyways. But it feels like sometimes you don't have a choice really. You can like, it's the same like when you fall in love with somebody, you can like reject it or you can let it happen, but you don't have a choice. It's like, if you like that person or not, you cannot choose to fall in love. You can put yourself in this situation, and you can appreciate the situation and follow it, or you regret not talking to that girl for the rest of your life. You know, like as a teenager, you have that, you know, you should have, but you didn't. And it almost seems like something that flows through you rather than is created in your brain. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I believe that. I've had similar experiences throughout my life. I've also been a music artist and still make music. And there's been instances like where in my sleep, I would like get lyrics and like stuff like that. And I'd wake up and be like, you know, I've had those kind of, actually, funny you say, my third book, The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, came to me as a download. I'm a plumber as well. That's like my main job. And I was underneath a sink fixing this sink in this empty house. And I just had a flash. I just saw it. I saw it right then and there. I saw the name first. I saw the name Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion. And then I saw the cover, or like the colors of the front cover. And then I just instantly knew what the book was going to be about. I knew almost every word. Like I didn't know the actual words, but I knew like the feeling of the words and like the content. And I was like, this is it. This is what my third book's going to be about. And so that was pretty wild. But yeah, man. So like consciousness it's an energy, if you will, that's coming into us. And there could be other consciousnesses, other energies that are also coming into us, like a radio, right? It's like picking up other signals. But the crystal lattice mind illusion, basically the concept that I came up with, states that our entire physical universe is made up of smaller moving parts, which we call particles, atoms, and everything. And that's already proven, right? Our entire physical universe is made up of smaller moving parts. And those are what we call lattices, systems. And the lattice is based off of mathematical systems. All these smaller moving parts, the particles and everything, they are put together through algebraic, geometric patterns. And those are expressed outward in some of the macrocosms. For example, we can plant a seed and the seed will sprout and then eventually it'll fractalize into a tree. But the twig represents the branch and the branch represents the tree. You see, it's all like a fractal. And as I say, the most prime example of the fractal nature of the universe is human beings. We literally, like little Russian dolls, are born out of each other. We fractalize out of each other. And so the entire physical universe is based off of lattices, small microcosm systems that are based on hard set mathematical, algebraic, geometric patterns. And another example of that is the fact that it roughly takes 9 months for babies to be born. That's a system. That's programmed, give or take. But we start off as a small little circular egg, and then we duplicate into another geometric flower type pattern. Then we start duplicating and then fractalizing, and then here we are 9 months later. So these are systems, algebraic, mathematical, geometric systems and patterns, and by definition are programs. So that's the crystal lattice part of it. Our entire physical universe runs off of a mathematical system, a program, a simulation. The mind illusion part of it is the fact that we neglect to realize that we are more than this body. Because most people walk around thinking that they're just a body. Like, hey, I'm just Eddie, you're Ken, right? But the truth is our body is made up of millions of moving parts. Millions. If you want to count all the cells and everything, we have all these different moving parts, the brain, the lungs, all these different things. So we're not just one physical unit. We are many different things. We're a machine, a spiritual machine, as I call it. But even further than that, we're not just the body. We're two main components. We're the body and the mind. And as I've demonstrated in my book, and as many quantum physicists are starting to also demonstrate, the mind is working with the body. They're two separate things. So we're not really a body, we're a mind. And this has been reflected in so many different studies. And for example, we all know about the theory of evolution, right? You're familiar with Charles Darwin?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Charles Darwin, the guy who said that we all came from monkeys or whatever.
Yes.
And I always like to joke around and say that if you look at him, I think he was just trying to explain why he looks like a monkey. The dude looks a little apish. But
Joe Rogan also always talks about this.
Really?
He likes the mushroom theory more than that theory.
Yes.
Much more.
Yeah. So the stoned ape theory is kind of coupled with the theory of evolution, right? Terence McKenna said that at some point our Neanderthal ancestors ingested the psychedelics, and then that's what caused us to have this psychedelic conscious upgrade.
And also I think made our brain grow double the size and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that.
But they go even further and say that what they say about weed, that the mushroom wanted that. And I always think about that when somebody gets really into holistic work. They don't do anything else anymore than trying to get other people onto holistic work.
That's a trip, yeah.
Because I'm like, oh shit, when every time I meet somebody holistic, I'm like what do you actually do? Because all you do is you found this thing that now you're trying to make everybody else do this thing. You know? But you don't actually do anything anymore.
Yeah.
You're
it's like a spiritual psychological colonizer.
Yes. And you're acting like the mushroom uses you to be eaten more and to get more bodies involved, kind of scarily almost.
it's like an alien. It's a little alien body.
Yes.
It's eat me.
Yes. And it's like using you. And they say mushrooms are so smart. Like the Japanese subway system is built on how mushrooms grow. And not only that, also mushrooms make you aware that like you're not a entity. You're me, I'm you.
Yeah.
What I do affects you. What you do affects me. And you cannot be this narcissist that is... This whole mental thing is like, oh, it's also narcissistic. I always think like the whole mental health epidemic is all me.
Yeah.
My problems. Listen to what I've been through. Listen to my trauma.
Yeah.
Even though, that's why I love Andrew Tate, because he always says it doesn't matter how you feel. You got to do what you got to do. You got to show up at the gym, and you got to do what you have to do as a man, and you have to, and I love that.
Yeah.
Addressing every feeling seems craziness, because you can get so lost in that, and then at the end of the day, I only care about myself. I don't care about my family. I don't care about how I affect the world, my contribution to culture. If I help anyone, it's all about my problems and how I feel, kind of.
Yeah.
And like I want somebody to listen to it, like a therapist, and like I want like everybody to like feel bad about me and victimize me, and like the whole like Black Lives Matter, and like it's all about like listen to what happened to us. Who has it the worst? Is it Asian hey or Black Lives Matter or the transgender or gays not being able to say that they're gay? I mean, at this point, you're just like living in this pain, and you're addressing the pain on a daily level instead of really checking what kind of effect you have on the world. What are you actually doing? When you post the Palestinian flag or the Israel flag on your social media, what are you actually doing?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? You're not helping anyone. This doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
You just want attention.
Yeah, no, dude, 100%. Like, it's pathetic, man, honestly. And I try to check myself in that same way. Like, I try not to be like, what they call like a social justice warrior. Like, I try to lead that middle path.
Yeah.
You know, I love what you just said. And I too, like, try to be very disciplined. And I like going to the gym. And I like going to the gym because it only gives you what you put in. You know, it only gives you what you put in. And I think we should approach all of life like that. You know, so many people today are self-entitled and think that they should just have everything just because they were born. I was literally having an argument with my friend the other day, one of my girlfriends, and and she was like, a lot of women of today was saying that she deserves the best man, the best everything, you know, and she's a wonderful person, and she does, you know. I mean, I'm sure we all deserve to have a great life, but I'm like, I simply asked her, like, okay, like, you want this millionaire man, this man who's the top, but I asked her, like, simply, like, why would that man want you? Like, you know, and she just went on a tirade, and I was just like, what do you mean? Don't you know who I am? Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I try not to expect anything out of life unless I've worked for it, you know, but that's a very masculine centered thought that, not.
But the gym is the good example. I think the best example. Unfortunately, like when you don't go to the gym, it's really hard to understand what the gym is. But the first thing is like hard work always outworks talent. Love that.
Yeah.
Everybody starts at zero. Love that too. And it's all up. It's all up to your like mind. It's what you choose. It's your choice to pick up that barbell or to go on that run or to put on those shoes, go for a swim, whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be the gym like the gym buddies, right?
Yeah.
Because David Goggins says that people get lost in that too. It's also a facade because you're not addressing it. You're not doing hard shit, actually. You're not putting yourself out there. You're just going to your like favorite gym and do your favorite bicep curl, you know? So it's more about like, are you gonna like... every morning when I go in the cold plunge, I listen to David Goggins.
Yeah.
And I love sitting in the cold plunge and suffering because I really feel like I find myself and I find what I'm made out of. And I think that's what most people are lacking. And again, on Joe Rogan, they said society really comes to an end when nobody suffers anymore. Because we're all made to be slaves. And once we don't have anything to do anymore, you don't know what your purpose is anymore. And you come up with problems and you just make them because you need conflict.
Yeah.
A man needs war and purpose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have all this anger and muscles and testosterone, and you don't know what to do with it, and
Start
you're
going
like
crazy. Yeah.
you shoot down a school because men need they need. That's why sometimes the military is great, or a strong father figure, or a strong hero. You need to know what you're gonna do with all this power, and if you don't have a direction, you get lost. And especially in a society where we live in a warm bed and we have all the food that we want, and like you said, you can like just make money online, and then at some point you have no purpose anymore. You feel you have no purpose.
Yeah.
Because you're a slave without a purpose. Now you're a king, but you still have this slave mind, because people feel really good. There's this guy who lived in Alaska, and he wrote down every day how good he feels about doing, like chopping the wood, burning the wood, hunting an animal, eating the animal, bringing it home, just warming up water. And like he would write down how satisfying the most simplest task is. And I know that about myself, how simple life can be. We have all this technology and the iPhones and how fancy everything is, but we're so primal sometimes, you know, especially, or like when you get like horny and you just want to fuck something, you get very primal.
Yeah. You start saying the dumbest shit ever.
You say the dumbest shit, you do the dumbest shit because you're not as sophisticated.
I'll go to the sun for you. I'll jump in the sun for you right now.
So it all comes down to like being like balancing out all this technology and like your primal instincts. And I feel like, do you believe that it looks like there've been many societies before us?
Yeah.
I always see the Egyptian pyramids, all these like stone things. I just saw this thing where there's like, it almost looked like a UFO drawn into.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Like stars. And like some round object into stone, one of the oldest ones they've ever found. And I always wonder, because they always talk on Joe Rogan on that too, like something happens and then it's the end.
It resets. And then we start real primal again. And it takes us thousands of years to come up with this technology again. And they say in these, like, what do you think about, like, is our society coming to an end, or? Oh man, well, you just said a lot that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
But and I also want to finish up the thing about the theory of evolution.
Yes.
But
we got to wait the mushrooms.
No, that's fine though.
Do you believe in the mushrooms?
Oh yeah, I grew up doing mushrooms.
Yeah.
I haven't done like a full on ceremony in a while. Well, actually, no, I did like a ceremony in Austin, Texas, at this really cool spiritual retreat.
No way.
Called Hedene. Yeah, Lola, she's cool. Check them out on Instagram. It was like a 5-day thing. We were there just hanging out, and the last day we all sat around, like about 30 or 40 of us sat around and did a shroom ceremony together. It was fun. That was the first time in a while that I had a full-on ceremony. Like I've microdosed over the years, but that was
what do you think about microdosing?
I think it's cool.
I want to start it, but I don't know if it's for everybody too.
Yeah, I mean, me and psychedelics do not mix for practical reasons. Like I'm not a practical psychedelic user, meaning like I can't do it every day. Yeah. You know, like my sister, for example, she's very holistic. She makes stuff out of plants or whatever, and so she likes it. She'll take a little pill, a little microdose, and it makes her feel good. You know, I feel like a lot of women in particular benefit off of those kind of things because they have a lot more going on with their body and pain.
What if you don't want to feel good?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to feel good, I don't know.
I don't want to feel good. Like,
what do you mean?
Oh, my purpose is not to feel good.
Like you want to go through something intense.
No. I want to like tap into my potential and help as many people as possible and talk to people like you.
Yeah.
That's why I love the podcast. I want to get as much knowledge and talk to many people and try to make people get out of whatever they suffer from, and like I can make other people feel good, and I want to keep my family safe. I want to be more primal, go hunting, provide, protect,
dude, for me,
and help my community.
Yeah,
but I don't need to feel good.
Yeah.
I hate feeling good. There's no point in being. I don't want to run around happy all day.
Yeah.
I don't need to feel good. I'm a man. I need to help.
Yes.
My purpose is not to feel good. So I don't need to take something to feel good. So I don't know if mushrooms. But then they say you can tap into.
Well, what mushrooms do for you is they help rewire your neural pathways.
Yes.
So if you're having problems, mushrooms are really great for if you're having problems with certain habits. So if you have a certain habit that you're having a problem stopping, you can take mushrooms for that. It'll help you rewire your neural pathways and unlearn that.
Yes.
So that's what it's good for. That's what it's really good for. And that's why when you have a trip, you're like learning all these big things like, whoa, I'm a human, I'm part of an earth and all these things, you know? So that's what it's good for. For you, lately, my thing has been, I'm going on a sober thing. I'm going on a sober journey. I don't want anything. I don't want anything.
Right,
nothing.
you want to be sharp.
Yeah. I feel like I get the most out of life when I'm just sober. Just give me water, meat, and iron.
Yeah.
You know, weights.
Organs.
Yeah. Well, organs too, yeah. But that,
Bro, you gotta tap into organs.
organs, yeah.
I'm hooked on organs.
Oh man.
Organ meat.
Yeah, yeah. You
And
sound like my
no
friend.
sugar and no preservatives and all this thing that clouds you. I think I hate being clouded by like sugar and like processed food, and like when I eat like crazy pasta or cheese and shit, and like I feel like I'm clouded and and inflamed, like this inflammation. I love this, like I love cold plunge and
Yeah.
exercise and focus.
Exactly, dude. Yeah, I've been slowly getting into more of these things myself. I've always been somewhat spiritual in a practical sense, like I'm meditating and stuff like that. But I've only recently started to take like my diet serious and my health serious, and like more and incorporating more practical spiritual practices like breath work and yoga and stuff like that. But no, I totally agree with you, dude. Like I don't need to feel good either. You know, like again, I'm a plumber, so I understand like having to just do what's right, just simply because it's right. It's the right thing to do. I go out there, I do my work, and just trust me, like I'm not smiling through most of it, you know. But that's the middle path, dude. Doing what you need to do simply because you need to. But I want to go back to what you said about the farm life and how it's simple and how we actually get a lot of joy out of that.
Yes.
Because that's something I'm realizing too, and that's something that I've realized about myself. It's kind of pathetic when I think about it, because I'm the most happy genuinely. Like I'm actually feeling like when I say happy, I don't mean like, hey, I mean like tranquilness, like peace. For me, that's happiness. If I have tranquility within me and peace within me,
Same.
I don't have to be smiling, but as long as I'm feeling that, that's true
peace.
happiness
Yeah.
for me. And I genuinely feel that the most when I'm working.
Yes.
Like I live on a mini farm, and so I have to like tend to the animals in the farm sometimes. And when sometimes I'm like, oh man, I want to go do this right now. I got to go tend to the garden. But once I get into my work, something happens at some point where I literally just stop thinking. I'm just focused on the plant or whatever it is I'm doing, you know? And so it's kind of funny. Maybe God was looking out for us. Maybe the Anunnaki were looking out for us when they said, don't eat that fruit. Like you don't want to become conscious. Trust me, it sucks. So you know, so maybe that's the whole story behind it. It's like, you guys went way too far, man. Now you're trying to create AI and all this craziness. Like, just keep it chill. Trust me, you want to stay in the garden. Maybe that's the real message all along. And actually, I recently did a dive on a book that was written by the founder of the Illuminati. One of your people from Germany.
Oh shit.
Yeah, he was a cool guy, dude. A lot of people, of course, have this misconception again about the Illuminati today, right? The music industry and all that. And there's truth to that. But the actual real Illuminati was founded by a dude named by the name of Adam Weishaupt. And he was from Bavaria, Germany. And he was a smart dude. And he was like a true liberal, like an old school liberal of his time. He was like going up against the government, religion, everything. He wanted to eradicate everything. And he started the Illuminati when he was like 24 years old. And he was a college professor by the age of 24 years old. And so he like infiltrated all of like the Freemason lodges and like the government around his city, and slowly incorporated his people into those positions so they could slowly like turn it around into what they wanted it to be. But he got exposed and got kicked out of Bavaria, Germany, and went to go live with his aristocrat friend. And wrote all these amazing books towards the end of his life about morality and humanity and enlightenment. And in his book, Diogenes' Lamp, which I did like a cool summary of, he talks about that. He says that he realized that like we've gone too far, man. Like simple life is the best life. That is the true enlightened life, is the simple one.
But yes and no. Because, okay, first of all, did you know that Buddha or Siddhartha, I think, when he was on earth or alive, he said the enlightenment is the end of suffering, which is not ha 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 happiness, laughter. It is when you're in peace with yourself, is because you don't suffer.
Yeah.
So in that moment, when you do that plant, there is no suffering because you're at peace. You're at one task. You just do that. And that would be fine if there weren't other humans. Like we would all be doing that, living in villages. Some people would go hunt. Some people would raise the children. Some people would find water.
Yeah.
Right? We would all be in peace. But there's some people that either ate mushrooms or did something, and or this consciousness came in, and now some people abuse it to make other people do what they want to do.
Right.
So now they came up with like crazy, I don't know, Beyond Burgers, right? They feed the vegans that and make money off that.
Yeah.
And in the process, the people that might live a honest life, just being a plumber or doing, I used to work at an EMT in the back of an ambulance. I felt the best when I was like an EMT and I would just go and help people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get paid anything. It was 1 year in Austria, you have to do either military or you have to be like at the Red Cross.
Whoa.
So I went to the Red Cross and I just helped people every day for nothing. It felt amazing.
That's
you
cool.
literally just help people.
Yeah.
You know, you feel at peace with yourself. But people abuse you, and the system abuses you and makes you work crazy hours. Now you have to like get on coffee. You do 12-hour shifts. You get treated like shit, and like there's this hierarchy of doctors, and you're like on the lowest end of the health pyramid. So at the end, now you cannot go back to that life maybe where you live on a mini farm and just do that, because there's a lot of influence.
Yeah.
Right? There's iPhones, there's stock markets. You have to use money. You can't just like trade things. So now you have to you have to watch out for yourself. And you cannot only, I have those moments too where I'm just like outside. I used to be the happiest, I think, when I was a Boy Scout, and I would just chop up wood and make a fire. And every time I make a fire, I feel so good about myself and about what I do. But now there's all these influences, and we have to do these podcasts to raise awareness and make people aware that people are hurting them with pharmaceuticals, hurting them with food, hurting them with Wi-Fi radiation, hurting them with social media. There's so much toxicity out there. You know, we just started sleeping with I turn all...
the Wi-Fi?
No, everything off.
Everything.
I go to the
toaster, everything.
No, the clickers. What is it? Where the electricity...
the breakers.
The breakers.
Yeah.
I go to the breakers, and besides the fridge, I get every breaker out. Bro, you sleep so good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Dang. I know. My friend she was living with me for a while, and she would do that all the time. She'd turn the Wi-Fi off and have to get up in the morning and walk over there and turn it back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bro, the world is toxic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dude, yeah, I want to get into that too, because I talk about that in my book. But I want to talk about the other 2 points real quick. I want to get with the theory of evolution, and then is the world ending? You asked me, do I think the world is ending?
Yes.
So real quick, with the theory of evolution and consciousness, right? So Charles Darwin, he said we're all monkeys or whatever. But most people don't know that Charles Darwin, he didn't just come up with that theory by himself. Actually, his colleague came up with most of the theory of natural selection. His colleague was named Wallace. His last name's Wallace. I'm forgetting his first name, but it's in my book. It's in the documentary on my channel. But Wallace and Darwin came up with that theory. But Wallace, like 5 years later, after they came up with the theory, actually renounced it, because he started to realize that the theory of evolution could not properly explain consciousness. He started looking at animals, and he started going to like these weird spiritual parties where he would see people like get together and do seances and like summon spirits and stuff. And he said he would see like tables move and spirits like manifest and all these different things. And so Wallace realized like, whoa, like the mind and the universe is way more complex than just monkeys slowly evolving into people. And so he renounced that. And we have a lot of his writings that I quote in my book in the documentary where he talks about it. And he says, the theory of evolution cannot properly explain the human mind. The human mind is coming from something else, somewhere else. And so to me, that was fascinating because in school, they only teach you about Darwin, but they don't teach you about Wallace and how he thought it was all fake or wrong, incorrect. And so again, it just points to the fact that our minds, our consciousness are way more complex and powerful than we're being led to believe. But getting to the question, do I think the world is ending? It's funny because I just did an Instagram live like 2 days ago. I was sitting in my car, just kind of bored, taking a break from work. And I decided to just talk about that idea, the end of the world, because I grew up a Christian. And so it's like every 5 years, it's the end of the world. You know, it's the book of Revelations. The Antichrist is here, you know, and so I'm just exhausted of that and tired of that. No, I don't think it's the end of the world. It might be the end of the world as we know it for certain people, for some people, but I have hope and confidence in the human spirit that whatever happens will always live on. Will always live on. Even if we get nuked, somehow I have confidence that somebody somewhere will live on.
Because so far we did.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't stay here.
Exactly. And we've gone through some crazy shit, man. We've gone through some crazy shit. The earth has almost been wiped out many, many times.
Yes.
So I believe in the human spirit. I think we will always live on, but it's important for people like us to have these conversations and leave this knowledge behind in the form of videos, books, writings on the wall, literally, so that when the next generations come around, they can find it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to get harder for them to find this as we get into a more technocratic AI, new world order government that's going to mediate everything. People like us aren't going to exist in that sort of future.
Do you think that, like what Andrew Tate says, where like they're gonna have electric cars, they're gonna control, money is only gonna be online, and the world as we know it, where you can just go wherever you want, kind of get in your car and go wherever you want and buy whatever you want, you know, like where you have like these like dollar bills and you can like nobody can track what you just bought. Yeah. And he says that it's coming to an end, and like with events like what's happening in the Middle East, or the Ukraine, or Hawaii. Yeah. The fear narrative always works the best. That's how you chop yourself something in your arm, because when you're scared, and then he said that when the families don't exist much more because people are not having kids anymore and the females are very masculine, make the rules in the household. So because the men are very rational, the women are more on the emotional side. So when a decision comes to, should we save your baby, or if you take this, or are you question it, they're more on the side of, okay, let's save grandma, or let's save my baby. I'll take the vaccine, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Or take over the power. The world is so scary. Take my guns and take more control because I need protection, kind of. And he says the world as free as we know it, where you can just go online, talk about whatever you want, and do whatever you want, kind of, is coming to an end.
Oh yeah, definitely, dude. Let me grab this drink of water real quick.
Which is kind of scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll touch on that right now, but I wanted to get back to the toxicity thing too. I keep remembering these things, and it goes with this. So as you were saying, the world is toxic, right? Yes. And so you turn everything off before you go to bed to sleep better. And it's designed that way. It's designed to be toxic because, as I speak in my book, the crystal lattice mind illusion, we have a part of our brain that is called the R complex, the reptilian brain. And it's the lower part of our brain where fear, depression, anxiety, survival functions. And it's a good part of our brain to have when we need it. You know, when you're in a fight or flight mode, you revert to your R complex, and then you're just simply thinking in that mode. So it's a good thing. It's necessary for survival and quick thinking. But as we've learned over many studies now, you can induce people into the R complex. You can put them into the R complex, into the reptilian brain, by pumping them with fear. pumping them with depression. And so people become depressed when they're not eating good, when they're not sleeping good, when they're having these insecurities about themselves through social media, through entertainment. And further than that, we've now realized that depression is not an emotion. It's actually what they call a global state of consciousness. A global state of consciousness is a state that affects your entire physiology. One example would be a coma. A coma is a global state of consciousness. When you're in that state, it attacks and affects your entire physiology. So we now know that depression acts in the same way. It's not an emotion. You know, when you watch a movie and you get sad, that's an emotion. You feel the emotion, you rub it off, off yourself, whatever, keep going. But depression is not an emotion. It's a state of consciousness that slowly affects your entire body and can keep you in that state. And now you're thinking and operating from a lower level, and you're actually put into a subtle state of the R complex. Now you've become a reptilian in a sense, right? They're turning us into the reptilians by keeping us in those lower forms of the R complex through depression. And so, yeah, the world is toxic. It's designed to be that way to keep us in that state, because also when you're in the R complex, it's easier to control you because, as you said, you're just thinking off of survival. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll do this. Yeah, because you're thinking about all these different things, your rent money, this and that, or whatever. So that's why it's important to be healthy and think on these higher thought forms and be tranquil in every situation so that you're not just erratic. But getting to the matrix, and do I believe that we're going to head towards that place that Andrew Tate has spoken about? I do believe that that's where we're heading. And I've thought this ever since I was a child, because I was warned about it when I was a child. It's a strange story that I've told many times, but I'll tell it again for those who haven't heard it. When I was 8 years old, I didn't know how to swim. And so when I went on this field trip with this camp that I was a part of, we went to this pool and all the kids were in the pool swimming, but I didn't know how to swim. So I was just chilling outside with one of the camp leaders. And looking back, it was all meant to be. And I went to that summer camp for like 5 years, 4 or 5 years in a row. And so I was very familiar with all the camp leaders. To this day, still remember their faces and their names. But this dude in particular, he was only there for like a few weeks. And he was strange. He was a strange, like, he always wore sunglasses and he had like blonde hair, super blonde hair and like pale skin. And so looking back on it, I feel like he was like an alien or something. Yeah, I think it's have you heard of the tall whites, the Nordics? Mm-hmm. You've heard of them? Yeah. I think he was one of those, dude, like an alien or some weird angelic being. It's just a fun thing to think about. But he sat me down because I didn't know how to swim. So he was hanging out with me. And for whatever reason, he starts talking to me about the Bible and the book of Revelation, and tells me, he sits me down at 8 years old and he says, Eddie, one day there's going to come a time in your life where the governments of the world are going to create the mark of the beast. And they're going to try to push it on everybody. And he said, first, they're going to try and do it politely, advertise it. And then slowly they're going to create something that makes it so that you have to get it. And then eventually they're going to just force you to get it. They're going to knock on your door and force you to get it. And I remember this part. He looks at me and he says, Eddie, it is better for you to die in the name of Jesus Christ and not take the mark of the beast than to take it. And I was like, all right, man.
8 years old.
8 years old. I was like, I just want to learn how to swim, man. So ever since then, I had been anticipating that event. And so as I grew up, I started to see the world shifting slowly towards this beast system. And I was like, this is what he was talking about. And so when the scandemic happened, I was the least bit shocked. It was wild. It was exhilarating, but I was the least bit shocked. I had friends calling me, because I've always been like the conspiracy guy in my friend group, calling me, what's going on, man? Is this it? Like, should we be worried? I'm like, no, don't worry. Don't be worried. Like, just be calm. Don't take that thing, whatever you do, and so I wasn't surprised, and I was like, this might be it. But I don't think we've reached that full point yet. I've always said that the New World Order, the beast system, will not exist until we live in that fully integrated technological society, and also when there will be nobody on earth who remembers the old days. I think that's an important thing, because right now there's way too many people on earth that remember the old days. They remember what it's like to be a human. But there will come a time when there'll be the last person that dies, and the very first generation. There will come a day where there will be the last person on this earth that remembers the old days and what it actually means to be a human, and they will die. And then the world is going to be left with an entire population that doesn't even know about us or what it really means to be a human. They're going to believe and think that being this cyborg integrated AI thing where TikTok is in your eyeball is normal. That's when the mark of the beast will happen. That's when it will happen. That's when Jesus is going to have to step in and be like, maybe I should come back. That's what I believe, man.
Yeah. Or you think, I don't know, because like, I think like maybe people from like thousands and thousands of years ago would say the same about us, that we don't know what it's like to wake up like under the stars and go hunting.
Yeah.
And get your own food. I completely lost what that feels like, or to have not a fridge and not have food, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe they would say the same about us right now. But I also feel like the universe works always in a yin and yang. And no matter how hard we try to do only one thing, no matter how much misinformation there is, it almost explodes the other side.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it needs it too. They both sides need each other. It's like Israel and Palestine. Like they can never just like exist just one and like happily ever after, or the languages, or female and male. Like they can never just like be only males, or it doesn't work that way. I feel like the universe works in a yin and yang. And no matter how much technology we pump into our system, there's gonna be this need of, like how it is right now, like people go on freaking retreats, eat organs. I mean, it's the most absurd thing. Like my parents didn't do that. Like they didn't have that need to go so much back to the Liver King kind of shit, you know? Like I feel like the more artificial you become, the primal need will just explode.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we are cyborgs, but then we will have like detox weeks where we like lay it all out and like turn the microchip off, and then we just make a fire and like sit there and just, you know, sit on the fire, because like we need that. We can't deny our primal.
Yeah, I agree with that, dude. 100%. And
so I don't know if there's going to be like a point, because don't you think the universe works in a terrific way, like where you think it's the end, like with the pandemic, and then there's all these like Rumble and like now Twitter, and like there's all these people speak out, and first you think it's just one, and then suddenly it's 100, and suddenly everybody talks about it, and suddenly Elon says every conspiracy theory is true, and like there's this crazy awakening happening. Same with like people stopping eating meat, and then there's this crazy other side that only eats meat, and then there's, you know, like it always works in these ways where it shifts and balances each other out. And like sometimes there's a point where it has to like destroy everybody, and then there's just a couple of humans gonna keep it going. But I don't know.
that's an interesting concept. And
don't you think the whole transgender and the whole that thing may even man wanna be more masculine than ever? Before you didn't have to, because like my dad was a man and my grandpa built his own house with his hands, and there was no need for strong masculine figures. Now I have a son and I'm like, I need to be that. That's gonna be me. I have to be much stronger now for him. So it always balances each other out immediately, instantly almost. And as soon as they do some toxic bad shit, there's gonna be like another company doing like beautiful healthy shit. Like it almost like it's like, you know, like as soon as there's fast food, there's a gym.
Yeah, no, that's a amazing thing to point out, and I think it's true. I think the universe does work in that way. And to your point, maybe that's why all this stuff is happening, right? Maybe that was the intention all along of our Creator, was to like challenge us so we can be pushed to these new heights, to these new limits. I talk about that in my latest book too, how like what I like to say is, if you want to know what God thinks, the Creator, if you want to know what the Creator thinks, all you have to do is observe nature. I think nature is God's direct expression, because nature is God's creation. Nature exists and operates without any interference. So that is literally God's direct expression. That is what it expects of us. So if we want to know what God thinks and expects of us, all we have to do is observe nature. And when we observe nature, we know that we have to suffer. Everything in nature suffers. Everything in nature has to fight hard to live. So that's what God expects of us. But he also rewards us for that. It rewards us for that. And so all these challenges, all these psychological, philosophical challenges, societal challenges are us struggling, us having to go through these challenges and really analyze ourselves and ask, do I want to be a woman or do I want to be a man? Do I want to be toxic? Do I want to be healthy? So that we can slowly work those things out as a global family to get to this end goal of finally reaching that utopian vision of what it actually is to be a human being. And that's what all religion is really about. Religion is about us being messed up, sinful things that require some reparation so that we can reach this like golden new body, new form. I mean, Jesus literally says that when he comes back, he's going to give everybody a new body. Like, what does that mean, dude? Like just cyborg arms? Like, yeah, this comes equipped with TikTok and Instagram, so I think we're slowly working these things out to eventually reach this like different type of human being. We're not done evolving. Although the theory of evolution was incorrect about the consciousness, I think it just proves the fact that consciousness in the mind is that more unique and miraculous. It was inserted into this strange experiment, and so that it could develop further. And so we're not done growing. We're not done developing as humans. We think that we're like the best we've ever been. Sure, maybe, but I think we're going to eventually develop into something we can't even understand yet for the benefit of what we are and what we're supposed to become. And I think that's reflected in this tale that I talk about in my book within Kabbalah. Are you familiar with Kabbalah? So Kabbalah or the Kabbalistic teachings is mystical Judaism. So every religion in the Abrahamic faith has a mystical side, an esoteric side, and Kabbalah is the mystical side of Judaism. And there's a story told in the Kabbalah known as the Shavira, the breaking of vessels. And in this story, we are told that the Creator created a universe before this one, and it put itself into it, a part of itself into everything. But that was too powerful, and that entire universe blew up. And so it had to create another universe, this one that we're in now. And this time it withdrew some of itself, only put a little bit of itself in everything so that everything could be sustained. And to me, that explains why God is seemingly everywhere, but also seemingly nowhere at the same time. And this also tells me that it's the Creator's intention for us to slowly, eventually get to the point where we could actually fathom what it is, what we are, and what all of this is. We couldn't just be told all of it right away, because as the Shavira story tells us, we'd explode. We wouldn't be able to handle that. And I think that's reflected in the microcosm of the awakening we're going through right now. People are freaking out. They can't handle the fact that they've been lied to for the past 50 years. So I think all in all, what I'm saying is it's in our Creator's intention for us to eventually evolve to the point where we can spiritually, physically fathom it, us, and this universe. But we'll only get to that point when we come to some sort of freaking unison as a global race, some sort of unison. Not everything has to be, unified and agreed upon, but some sort of unison on a human level where it's like, all right, we're human, man. Like, let's do this thing together. But it's going to have to take that unison. And that's probably why they want that distraction, because they know that once we actually all finally interconnect, not just through the internet, but actually spiritually, consciously interconnect, watch out.
So, but you've read like countless ancient history, religious books, texts, paragraphs. Do you see like some sort of like propaganda in those, or is there like a time where they didn't try to alter the narrative? I where it's like just like profound information that has no motive to benefit the person writing it?
There's definitely some propaganda in the ancient texts, specifically those coming from like the kings or any of the political side. Mm-hmm. Just like today, they try to justify what they do through God, through the gods. They'll say, or the god Marduk, told me to come and obliterate all of you. There's that type of propaganda. But what I've found actually, which is even more unfortunate than that, through all of my years of studying, the number one cause of the corruption, damage, and fragmented nature of human plight is simply human error. Human error and arrogance. Like, we've literally just fucked up by not understanding things correctly. That's the number one reason all of this got so fucked up. And that's what I point out again in my Lucifer book. It's like Lucifer never existed, man. We read this all incorrect and created this egregore, this archetype, and now it's a TV show and all these things. People get it tattooed or whatever, And the same thing is with monotheism, the Abrahamic religions. They were all based off of these Anunnaki myths. It's like we just keep trying to we keep looking at things and not really understanding them correctly and creating all these spin-off, exaggerated expressions from it, And so. And I experienced that even in my own life. It's like within the conspiracy community, there are so many like rumors that have been spread for hundreds of years, and they're not even true. So that's the unfortunate thing that I've learned out of all my research, is that a lot of the corruption and just disfragmented or the fragmented nature of our life here on Earth is just come about through human error.
So how do you know what's true and what's not? Like when you go through these texts and through these religions, and it's always like, especially once you have that mindset that like you might be lied to.
Yeah.
I think even now when my doctor tells me something, I have to be like, I don't know, even if it's good for me, I'd be like, I don't know, because I don't trust you. I don't trust anything anymore, right? So like when I get some information about what happened, like you don't want to be the person to not believe anything, because then you feel so lost. And there's also so much beauty in religion and so much beauty in Egypt and history and right in Greek and Rome and all the like art they created and all the stories and everything, but it's all one point of view, and it's really like there's so much error, so many mistakes, exaggeration, like there's so many like things taken out of proportion, and like the numbers changed, and like it all doesn't make sense, and like we cannot be only 7,000 years old. It all doesn't make sense really. And then you find all these things. They keep finding things that like are way older than us.
Yeah.
Right? Technologies, stones that are in the wrong position, buildings that cannot be built, and it really makes you like feel like I don't know anything really.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful question, and I've been asked that before, and skepticism is good. Skepticism is a really good thing to have. But it's funny because now the conspiracy community or the truther community, they like everything's a psyop to them. Like nothing can be trusted. Everyone's a shill. Everything's a psyop. Yeah. Stand back. And look,
everyone's an agent.
Exactly. And I grew up like that. When I first got into this information, my mind broke, and I was like that. But I had to slowly kind of like get out of that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But it's what I'm saying is it's funny because now the work that I do doesn't only debunk mainstream science in mainstream academia, but the work that I do actually debunks the conspiracy community too.
Good. It should.
Yeah. And it's not my purpose. My purpose is always to just look at things unbiased as a historian. That's what I do. And it is a difficult job because there is propaganda in history. And so the way that I do it, my method is whatever subject I'm looking at, I first ask myself, when and how did this subject come into being? How far back can I take the subject before any date further than that, it did not exist? When you find that date, for example, for Lucifer, right? I asked myself before I wrote the book, where did the idea of Lucifer come from? And so when you go back to that beginning date, you can, and you start analyzing the history around that time, you can kind of see how it was created. And if you go further back, you can see how these other events led up to that creation. And so it's like this very, complex process of just analyzing the historicity around the beginning of that subject and then watching it progress. And you can see, and when you watch it progress through reading the books and whatever, when you watch it progress and analyze the progression of the subject, you can start to pick out, that's when it got fucked up. It was that person who did it. So that's my method. That's my process. And it's an arduous, meticulous process. And I'll give you an example. There's a conspiracy going around that every so often becomes popular again. And it's the conspiracy that the Freemason Albert Pike predicted the 3 world wars. And I don't know if you know who Albert Pike is. No. I'm sure you're familiar with the Freemasons though, right?
Yes.
Secret society, they run the world or whatever. Albert Pike is one of the most famous Freemasons, and he was actually a Confederate general in the U.S. Army and a very important guy. And he wrote a book, which I consider the Freemason Bible. It's called Dogma and Morals, or no, Morals and Dogma. Very interesting book. I have an old vintage version of it. And so a lot of people always blame him for like the Luciferian, like Illuminati world that we live in. But there's a theory out there that he wrote this letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, who was a whole nother conspiracy guy or a whole nother nefarious character. But the conspiracy states that Albert Pike wrote this letter to Giuseppe Mazzini stating how the 3 world wars were going to happen. Basically instructing the Illuminati how the 3 world wars were going to transpire. And he was writing this before the First World War had even happened because he was from the 19th century. And so this rumor is going around the world right now on the internet again. Everybody, look at this. Albert Pike predicted World War III. And what makes it interesting is that when it comes to the Third World War part, it talks about Islam and the Middle East and stuff like that. And so we're like, well, that's what we're living right now. And so one day, like I do with most of my work, I decided to sit down and ask myself, is this true? You know, what's going on with this? So I sat down. It took me an entire week of research to going through everything. And I eventually found the origin of that rumor. This rumor has been going around for 200 years almost. And I found that it's crazy how it progressed. Let me just tell you right now, it's not true. Albert Pike never wrote a letter predicting the 3 world wars. It's simply not true. The guy who made that popular was William Guy Carr, who did fight in World War I or II, and who wrote this as a, I don't know, he just wrote it as a conspiracy. He was a conspiracy writer. He was a conspiracy author. And he was like, he believed that Satan was running the world and all this stuff. Interesting guy, interesting author. And so he made that rumor popular, but it was based on this whole other line of things. So it wasn't he didn't like create it to be like a troll or anything. He honestly believed that. He made their letter popular. He didn't come up with it though. He got it from somebody else. And I go over that in the video that I made. And that person got it from somebody else. But when you take that telephone game, right, far enough back, when you take that chain of events far enough back, you start to see the letter dissipate. And the origin of that letter has nothing to do with world wars or anything. It has to do with the idea of Satan taking over the world, but nothing to do with world wars. It slowly progressed to this letter by Albert Pike. And William Guy Carr, this conspiracy author, made that popular. And but it's still fascinating that they were able to like come up with that prediction. But they came up with that prediction during the first and second World War, so they could kind of see that already unfolding at that time. But anyways, I say all that to say, man, it's like the work that I do debunks mainstream academia and conspiracy academia because it's my job to just look at things unbiased as a historian so that we can start to move away from these things. Man, again, so start to move away from all of this and say, look, we're just humans, man. We're people. We're here. We have consciousness. It's a miracle. So how are we going to move forward now? How are we going to move forward with new, invigorated ideas and philosophies that aren't playing on these old Abrahamic faiths and all these old conspiracies about the Illuminati and the Antichrist. And it's like, dude, let's just chill out for a second, and try and move forward together in a way that's going to help us be sustainable and beneficial, and prosper. It's basically the work that I do, I guess.
And people love that our life is like a movie, like that there's bad and evil.
Yeah.
And like to point a finger at the Illuminati, they're like all these evil people sitting together, creating this evil plan to enslave us all. I just don't think it's that easy. It's much more complicated than that. And at the end of the day, it comes down that you can just control yourself, your body, what you do on a daily basis, and if you're gonna live a life of suffering or not, and if what kind of contribution you're gonna do to your surroundings, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Which gets more complicated with the internet because now you can touch so many people, right? It's a crazy position to be in. To like before it was like maybe just your village, and now you can really like millions of people watch what you say, and things can really be taken out of context. And like you said, like before you know it, people wanna create this like 3 World War thing that you might not even have said. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. On my way here, I was thinking like, as a joke, like, man, everybody's over here like worried about World War III. I'm on World War IV, baby. Like, come on, let's progress. Like, nah, it's just like everybody's just always waiting for that next big thing. Yeah, but yeah, we need that. As you were saying, we need that. We need that dichotomy, that yin and yang, and I think it's a healthy part of evolving, making things evolve, forcing things to evolve. And that's a very integral tenet of a lot of spiritual systems like that of Rosicrucianism. I spoke with the Rosicrucian master in San Diego, in Oceanside, and he told me that his belief is that there aren't really any demons or like evil beings. They're perceived to be evil and demonic because that's their job. It's their job to be demonic and evil, but they only do that to force us into righteousness, to force us into doing the right thing, to force us into evolving. And going back to the Illuminati book that I read and did a dive on, Adam Weishaupt said the same thing. He is saying the same thing I'm saying now, is that he understood religion was a facade. He understood that at his time, which is wild. That book is amazing, dude. It's an amazing piece of like intellectualism and existentialism. At his time in the 1700s, and early 1800s, he already knew like religion was a facade and everything, government was a facade. But he concluded that it's necessary. He said, because the masses aren't ready for this awakening, he said in the book. So we need religion still to give these people a reason to be good. How fucked up is that? Like we like need like the idea of God and the devil to be good, because we know that without that, we'd probably be running around doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That's how fucked up we are. It's like we can't just be good just to be good. Like we need some kind of like system. And so
that has like good and evil.
Yeah.
And you like be good or you go to hell.
Exactly.
But that almost seems like that not everybody should be on the internet.
Oh.
Maybe people are not ready to be on the internet, because now this is a huge problem, because now you get all this information if you want it or not. You can't just scroll on TikTok and like live your normal life. You will get confronted with conspiracy theory or truth, whether you want it or not, and you will be like triggered if you want it or not, no.
Yeah.
And anybody with a phone, and everybody scrolls. If you have a normal job, or if you're completely into like whatever you do, like back in the day, you could just go to church on Sunday, call it a day.
Yeah.
But now you swipe, and there will be a video of children getting bombed. So
oh god, yeah, it's like children bomb, ass and titties, children bomb, ass and titties. It's like, it's just like crazy. But Yeah, man, it's dangerous to have so much information. And luckily, I got into this stuff at a young age. And I was like fanatical at a young age. Like me and my friends would be going around school, like preaching this stuff, like the government are reptilians, man, wake up. Like I used to be like that, like all crazy. Like we used to write on sticky notes, like research this, research that. And we'd like post it around on people's cars and doors and stuff. But I slowly learned that like, it's not for everybody. And I was freaking people out.
Yeah.
Like I literally had this chick nickname me Demon. That was my nickname. Some people still call me that who remember that time period. Because she said she went home and had like nightmares of the stuff that I was saying. So she's like, she came to school the next day. She's like, you're a demon. I know it. I'm like, what? Like, I'm just talking knowledge, yo. And to this day, people think that I'm a Satanist sometimes. I used to get labeled a Satanist. And it's funny when people call me like a Freemason, like it's kind of.
I think it's like your logo.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't help. That music in the beginning, it's like so spooky.
Oh.
That shit's so crazy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
That doesn't help. I think, especially when you like when you're like fully asleep.
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
you see that with the music, you're like, oh shit, he is definitely the devil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, what I'm saying? So I like to be artistic and stuff like that, And I love wearing black, So I'm kind of like on that more, I guess, darker goth, vibe. But I grew up on hip hop. Like I grew up on hip hop and rock and roll, and so I'm just influenced by a lot of that, like heavier, darker stuff. But yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a compliment when people call me like a Freemason or something. It's like, oh wow, you think that I'm running the world? Cool. No, man, I'm just in my underwear eating, some food in my kitchen, making these videos. But man, I was gonna say something. We were just talking about. What were we just talking about?
That not everybody is ready for this kind of information.
Yeah. So I'm lucky that I got into this at a young age because I went through those phases already. Yeah. I had a mental breakdown at one point, and it was hard to get out of that. There was a point in my life where
Too much truth?
Too much truth, man. Too much truth. Like it literally broke my mind. I went through a psychosis.
What happened? Like you were doing. It was too dark, or
it was just crazy to learn like how much of what I thought was real was fake.
Yes.
Like it was honestly like unbearable at one point. Like, damn, like where do I go from here? And I was young. I was younger. I was probably like 20, 21, around there. And
how did you find out that everything is a lie?
Well, at that age, I had already known a lot because I started researching the conspiratorial, esoteric, occult, basically at like 12 years old. Mm-hmm. I still remember the day to this day. I was in my cousin's computer chair in this big bulky computer, and I was listening to hip hop music that was talking about this stuff, like Immortal Technique, Jedi Mind Tricks, Gore-Tex, and all that stuff. And I was raised on like Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, Bob Marley, who were all anti-government and psychedelic, and so I already had that in me at a young age. I used to go around in elementary school, throwing on my arms, tear down the wall, tear down the wall. That's from Pink Floyd. Yeah, so I was already like that at a young age. But I learned a lot, like really fast. And also had gone through a lot of traumatic things too in my personal life that added to the stress, and was doing a lot of drugs still, shrooms, drinking, cannabis, which can be beneficial in certain ways, but I wasn't doing it beneficial. I was just partying. So all of that caught up with me. And at like around 2021, something happened. I just snapped, and I was like weird. I was like in a psychosis, dude. Like everything was weird. I was anxious all the time. I was super anxious. Like felt like I was going to have a panic attack all the time. And I couldn't trust anybody. I thought I was even kind of starting to hear voices, and like I would think that certain people were like a part of like agencies and stuff, like good and bad. Like I would look at, for example, this is a weird one to admit, but like my ex, her parents were like very Christian and like very involved in the church. And I started thinking that they were undercover angels. I would look at them and smile. I'd be like, I know what you are.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah, like I know. Like I thought they were undercover angels, and I could like see their aura and shit. And it was just bad. And my ex, like she could feel that she didn't like me at that time. She thought I was like on drugs and shit. She was like questioning if I was on meth, which I wasn't. But I would have hallucinations, dude. Like I'd be in bed, like having these weird hallucinations and stuff. And so I finally like, I've always been self-aware enough to like be able to reflect. You know, I always keep that as a practice, like reflect. Okay, are we crazy? Are we going crazy? No? All right, we're good. You know? So I eventually had to self-reflect and decided to take a break, and I stopped researching everything. I just stopped. I was like, I don't want to know anything more strange than the weather. That's it. And so I took like, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 months from researching anything. But something wanted me to get back into it. I remember going to a thrift store. I went to one of my favorite thrift stores in San Marcos, in San Diego, just cruising because I like to do that. And then right in front of me was the entire Zecharia Sitchin series, the entire Earth Chronicle series by Zecharia Sitchin, the guy who wrote the Anunnaki theory about extraterrestrials coming here and genetically making us and stuff like that, sitting there. And he's one of my favorite authors. And I was like, damn, dude, they're all like $1 each. It was a come up, you know, pretty much to say. And so I'm like, dude, should I buy them? I'm like, dude, I don't know if I want to get back into that. But I was like, you know what? This has to be a sign. Like, there's no way these are all just sitting here for $1. So I bought them all and decided to get back into it, but approached it differently. This time I was like, I'm not going to like take this personal. I'm not going to like try and preach this to anybody else. If I'm going to get into this, it's going to be for my benefit, for my educational benefit. And so I slowly got back into it. And yeah, it was just different. I just had a whole different confidence. And also I decided to go sober then too. So I went sober and like started working out again and stuff like that. And so just led a healthier life and was able to process this better. And so to this day, I approach all of this, again, unbiased as a historian. And it's my work. I leave it as my work. I don't go around and like talk about this at parties or family events. Like people will listen to me and they think that I'm probably like this all the time, but I'm not. Like I actually don't even really like talking about this stuff outside of my work, unless it's like a genuine conversation. Like people will like genuinely have questions and like, yo, like I've been struggling with this. Like what's up with it? That's when I like to talk about it. But other than that, you'll just see me chilling, dude. Like just kicking it. But inside there's a holy war going on. With all this knowledge, because I had to learn to chill it out and just view this as my work and leave work for work time and go do my other stuff when it's time to go do that.
And that's again the yin and yang. I think that you cannot just do one thing because it will explode you.
Yeah.
You know, if you only do that.
Exactly, dude. Yeah. And thank God, like I have all these other passions, you know, like music and stuff like that. And so that I can turn to when I have this like extra energy that I need to put somewhere.
Are you only interested in like ancient history or like what's going on right now as well?
Oh man, I love any history, dude. I mean, I do keep up to date with what's going on now. I watch certain podcasts and read certain news articles because I want to know what's going on in the world and also know how it ties into the ancient world. Because to me, it's all a succession of things. Like what's going on today are some of it's a ripple effect from what happened thousands of years ago. But yeah, I love staying up to date. But honestly, I just love history in general, dude. I could sit down and watch a history of how peanut butter was made, like honestly, and be like super entertained and fascinated. Like I just love anything historical. I love to know people's stories too. Like I'll interview people for my channel too. I love to just sit with people. And I've always been like that. My cousins, they make fun of me because I used to carry around a camera with me when I was young. Like I was ahead of this whole like internet age. I used to carry around a camera and like interview people and like film things. And I have tapes going back to like middle school of like me just filming and stuff. So yeah, I'm fascinated by history in general, how things came to be the way they are.
And I think it's so crazy because looking at history and then seeing history happening at this point, and then seeing all, like, especially like in the Middle East right now, how you have one narrative, then there's another narrative, then I see that both sides fake certain things and have misinformation on both sides. And I am like, this is insane. Yeah. Like, this is like why it is so hard to understand. And then even when you go there, I went to Jerusalem many times, and I've been to Gaza, and I looked at the wall, and I've been to a refugee camp down there, and no matter it also depends like who you spend the time there down there, who you're with, kind of like, and the perspective is like so different, like how you say like this wall looks to you like this and might look different to me, and everything is perspective, and you can really get in like sucked up into like one narrative, and it seems endless.
Yeah.
And like it's so confusing, and like and so hard these days to have an opinion. And I wanted to ask you like if you ever self-censor, because this is like my number one topic right now, is because like we have a podcast, and I don't want to self-censor, but I still do so much self-censoring because first of all I don't know, and the truth for yourself changes constantly, right? Like at one point I hated Trump because I saw all the propaganda, and like I was like, oh my God, he's racist, he's homophobe, blah, blah, blah. Then you look more into him and you're like, oh my God, like this is interesting. He did this, he did that. He never started a war. Like this is very interesting. And then depending on who you talk to, you get easily persuaded into one direction. I can have one person on a podcast who gives me legit points why I should hate him or Andrew Tate. I had like the last guest I had on like just said that he had no integrity and that he disagrees with a lot of things, and I was like, I agree with you. I see what you're saying, but it's just not that simple. Yeah. Sometimes it is just not black and white, and you change as a person too. You evolve, and you look at the interview of you 5 years ago or a year ago, and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I said that, or I used to be that person. So even yourself, you're disgusted by yourself maybe and by your opinions. And so it's really hard to, because you don't want to be completely uncensored where you just act stupid and maybe have a sort of the afraid part of your brain talk, you know, like in pain or in like when you always hear somebody talk about like a painful experience, you can really tell it's very unbiased, very biased, and like very you're talking out of your pain kind of. So it's really hard to like to have a podcast and to be uncensored, because you don't want to be stupid and say something that's not true, but you also need to be as authentic as possible and always tell your audience what you really believe in.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to navigate. I try not to be extreme in anything, you know, and the part of me that I censor, to be honest, is just kind of like is sometimes my goofy side, you know, and my goofy side and just like my street side. Because when I started doing Esoteric Eddie, I kind of approached it from like an astute academic demeanor, which is a part of me. That's how I am too, even in my daily life. And I was actually going to school to be a teacher, but I left. I'm a college dropout. And that's a whole nother story. But I'm also very street too. Like I grew up on the streets, you know, skateboarding, doing graffiti, being a hip hop artist, getting into craziness, you know, talking shit to cops, you know, like, so I have a very street side of me and goofy side. And so I censor that for the most part because I want to be taken serious, but slowly, and as of recently, I've been letting more of that side come out because I don't want to like have to play a role all the time either. You know, it's like when I'm doing my Esoteric Eddie work, I'm working, I'm performing. And so I need to be professional, concise, and have that demeanor. But at the same time, it's like I'm a person, and sometimes I just want to be myself too and just relax and say some stupid, goofy shit, you know? But as far as censoring myself when it comes to extreme opinions, I do that. I don't, like I have a friend, for example, she's always getting in trouble because she's very opinionated and extreme with her opinions. So just say some crazy shit like about religion or politics, and it's like, bro, like, and she'll get mad at me sometimes for like, don't you agree with me? Like, why aren't you saying something? I'm like, because we're having lunch with these people, like just chilling, you know, like we're not on a podcast trying to change the world right now, you know. So again, like people might think that I'm like this all the time. I'm not, you know, like I hold back a lot of this gnarly knowledge that I have, because I know that it can be damaging to some people or difficult to some people, and it can just cause like just unnecessary arguments, So yeah, I'm not extreme in my opinions. I walk the middle path, and I don't engage in arguments. I only engage in genuine discourse. Genuine discourse. Some people have called me out on social media, like pretty big influencers, like making little clips about some of my content, like, oh, this dude's incorrect. Mostly like theologians, like Christians. And I've shot back, and like I made like response videos to them, but only because their responses were intellectual. I see a lot of like dumb stuff, like dumb negative things. I never respond to any of the dumb negative comments. But when people are like genuine and intellectual about their critiques of me, I like that. I'll say, okay, like, yeah, well, let me show you why I think you're incorrect then, But yeah, it's pretty much how it is.
So what have you said about Christianity that got you in trouble?
Dude, well, my entire work is heretical to religion.
Yeah.
My two books, most of my work pretty much deconstructs religion, and I basically have stated in my work that the God of the Bible isn't real, and the God of the Bible is based on Anunnaki mythologies. But I also say in my work, just because we know that as historians, we know without hesitation that Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, is just a rendition of the Canaanite god El, who is a rendition of the Anunnaki gods. That's factual, and it's proven, and it's obvious. But a lot of these theologians, these Christians, they just can't seem to accept that, because they have this very personal connection to God and Jesus, which I do too. But the thing that they don't understand is that just because I deconstruct religion, all of the Abrahamic faiths, I still doesn't mean that I don't believe in a creator. I'm just more radical in my human belief. I say that, again, there's religion and there's politics, but those two things are human. They're man-made. And I don't believe in anything man-made. Religion is man-made. Yahweh is man-made. To me, the creator of all, which I do believe in, supersedes any human concept. And so I'm just more radical.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I love God, and I love the world, and I believe so much in God. But I don't want to sit in a church talking to this old man, or like I feel weird when they pass around the money bucket, and I feel silly. I feel like, and the singing and everything, it's cool, but like, don't tell me that you know who God is, because you don't, and I don't, and I love him and I believe in him, but you don't need to pressure me or make me pay you because you think kind of like it seems silly, and it also feels absurd. And I don't know how you sleep at night I could not like be like, hey, you gotta like pay me, otherwise God will punish you. Like that seems like really absurd and crazy. And there's always a payment involved. It always comes down to the money, and they don't pay tax, and there's just so much weird shit going on. Like there's some sort of like craziness which seems very man-made and not God-made. Like there's a lot of like out of context situations that they've created with burning witches, or even in the beginning not be letting other people read the Bible. There was a long period of time where nobody was allowed to read it. Then they so what you're saying is that all these stories are altered and a lot of misinterpreted, but it all goes down to one story, one original story.
Yeah.
Is that it all goes back to one, and it just got like spread out and then into a lot of different religions and a lot of different languages? Or
yes, basically it's a bit more complex than that. But what I'm saying, I guess to be specific, is that the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, are all based on the Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki.
It all comes back to the Anunnaki.
The Anunnaki. But also...
And there was nothing before the Anunnaki?
Oh, there definitely was, but we haven't found it yet.
Yes.
We found structures prior to them, but we haven't found any text prior to them.
Yes.
So But most people, especially within the religious sectors, view life as it's like just separate, as if Islam's a whole separate thing, Christianity's a whole separate thing, and that their gods are separate things that are the true one. But the truth is, we're all one family. We all are one family. We're all one group of humans on this one earth. And there was a beginning of this modern age 7,000 years ago. And from that beginning, we started to disperse. And as we dispersed and as time progressed, everything progressed together. And so it's not that this one religion over here is right and this one over here is wrong. It's that they're all right in their own sense, but also all incorrect in their own sense. We all develop these different ideas as Earth progressed, as time on Earth progressed, as history progressed. It'd be like us living in one house, right? A family of 3 kids living in one house with the same father who treated us all the same. But we all go off and live different lives with different responses to how that father treated us. This son might be like, I hate dad. He was terrible to us. I'm going to go be an alcoholic. This son might be like, well, I love dad. He was rough on us, but I'm going to use this as motivation to become successful. And then the middle child might just be like, I don't care. So it's like.
And you can see the overlap of the religions. Like what you're saying, like, why is it overlapping in so many things? Why are there like certain things that you find in every religion, right? They're not completely separate. It's not like they have different names, but sometimes even the names are similar, and there's so many similarities. It's crazy. And even you see that in the languages too. Yeah. Spanish, Italian, like German, there's things that overlap where there's like words that are the same, and like you see that like it all, like it seems to be like it's not completely different, there's things that overlap.
Yeah, people think that certain races just sprouted out of the ground, no, they didn't just come out of the ground from over here and from over there. We all started somewhere and spread out. And that's why there is all these similarities in languages and cultures, as you're saying, so that's what I believe, man. And it's obvious to me. It's obvious when you start looking at it that way, that all these religions were based off of each other and then based off of the other mythologies. But just as humans, man, we're so tribal, we're so gang centered, we just like to have our thing and be like, this is the real thing, and your thing sucks. But it's not like that, man. It's like we're all one family. We just happen to respond to history differently and create beautiful works of culture differently. And I like how you keep saying that, that there are beautiful examples of religion, because just because I do this work of deconstructing religion doesn't mean I don't like it. I love the Bible, honestly. I love the Bible. And on my way here, I made a little reel about the story of Noah, because I think there's still a lot to gain from it. Like, for example, I made this little reel about the story of Noah. Most people think that the story of Noah is about the flood and the giants and the sons of all these different things, right? But to me, there's a simple little message in the story of Noah that most people overlook. At the end of the flood, Noah becomes a drunkard off of wine. We're told that once him and his family survived the flood, he started growing grapes and made wine and became a drunk. He would just get faded.
No purpose,
just get faded. And he would just fall out hungover. And his son, Ham, walked in on him while he was hungover and naked, laying on the floor. And Noah was outraged by this and cursed his son. And his son, he cursed his son for seeing him in that way and also judging him for being in that way. And so the line of Ham was cursed because of that. And so to me, I'm like, wow, the simple message of the story of Noah is to not judge people for how they cope with trauma. We have a lot of these people out here who are psychological Noahs, going through psychological floods. And so that message is actually not to judge people for how they cope with trauma, because if I had to survive a worldwide flood and watch the entire earth die, shit, I might become a drunk off wine too. So yeah, man, I love religion. I love humanity. I'm an existentialist. Whether it's good or bad, honestly, either I love it or I'm fascinated by it. I don't love Hitler, but I'm fascinated by Hitler. honestly. Fascinated by the Nazis and all of that shit. Like, it's everything. Either I love it or I'm fascinated by it. But there's very few things in life that I hate. And I pretty much only hate olives because they make me throw up.
Man, that's crazy. I think I would really like to talk to you again when you don't have children, right?
No, not yet.
Because I feel like you understand the world and your purpose and life a lot better when you have children.
Mm.
And I think that's what makes me sad the most, is that these days, like, there's not a lot of children and that they're so after the families.
Yeah.
I think family and your purpose and what you can control at the end of the day, a lot comes down to you making a family.
Yeah.
There's not control, and sometimes you don't have that much control over what you think you do.
Yeah.
But it's different once you have to provide, and you have to, that really puts you in your place, if you want it or if you don't want it, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing, and the people don't, I think it's not talked enough these days that, like, that should be. I would love my son to not be like, I want to become this, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be rich, I want to drive a Lambo. I would love him to be like, I want to be a father, I want to have a lot of children. I've never heard somebody say that.
Yeah.
And that should be the main goal. Like, when you said you're a plumber, I don't give a fuck. I don't care if you drive a Lambo or if you're a plumber. Like,
Yeah.
that means nothing to me, but it means a lot if you are like, nah, I never want to have children. Like, fuck that, you know? Like, that means, like, you're a narcissist. You only care about yourself, and you're not really dialed in. That also seems like you might want to, like, hurt me because you don't see that we're like one.
Yeah.
You need a sort of sense of family that then we can work together, because you understand. Like, it's very easy to talk to somebody who also has children, because they're going to be, like, protective over their own children too, and they get it, kind of.
Yeah.
And I think that should be very encouraged. And also the whole thing that you never will be ready for it, and it will just do its thing. It's very primal. It's just what happens. It's like, you know what to do. It's a very different aspect, and it's just so cool to have a family. And I think that really, that is what I see is, like, missing a lot.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's always been about people fighting and religion and misinformation, and we've always been lied to. I feel like it's not really that bad now.
Yeah.
I feel like right now we're in a pretty good state, kind of, you know. Like, before they were just lying and nobody could prove it wrong, and
Yeah.
you know, they might just kill you, and I don't know. I would really encourage being like, it would be really interesting when you make that transition and it happens, kind of.
Yeah. I would love to. I've always wanted to be a dad ever since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I would always come up with, like, when I was younger, I'd come up with, like, crazy baby names, like stuff I wouldn't name them now. Like, I'm gonna name my kid Shark.
Yeah.
You know, like, but no, I would love to be a father. And I'm going through a divorce right now, so I'm married.
Shit.
Yeah. Not to be all, like, you know, dark, but I was in the process. You know, I was in the process of starting a family and everything, but just didn't work out. Well, it's crazy, and I haven't admitted this on the internet yet, but a lot of my friends and family know that my ex, she decided to fully embrace her lesbian side, and she never really wanted kids anyway, and that was kind of always a point of contention with us. And that made me sad because I loved her, you know. I thought she was my soulmate and everything. And I was like, damn, like there was times where I had to like maybe think about compromising having kids. I'm like, damn, do I really want to compromise that, you know? And so we play around with the idea of just adopting at the very least, because she was always afraid of the process of having kids for whatever reason. But it all worked out in the end, you know. She decided to go full lesbian, and I'm not with her anymore. So I'm looking for a baby mama. If anybody wants to take the application. But I agree, man. And it's funny you say that, because as of recently, I had this huge realization, and I was like going off with my sister about it. We were like going on our way to like this family party, and I was like, dude, I had this crazy realization. And I was watching a video. I forgot the guy's name, but he's an amazing historian. He's an old guy. He's a historical analyst. And he was talking about how America resembles Rome right now, and when Rome fell. And he basically realized that the past 50 years of liberal wokeism, if you will, right? The past 50 years of liberal wokeism and all these different random things have basically been secretly causing the decline of reproduction.
Yes.
That's the actual secret agenda of all of this craziness in our wild world.
Elon says.
Yep.
That's gonna, not the nukes or the wars or any of that. No, there's no babies anymore. There's a huge decline.
Yeah.
They say Japan will be half of the population in like 30 years. There's like more diapers for old people. This is a huge problem. And look at all the Hollywood movies. Have you ever seen a woman give a blowjob? In the last 20 years that I've watched movies, it is always a guy being submissive to a woman. They always go down on her at all times, every Netflix show. And not that I have a problem with like going down on it, but like, why do they only show that and not the other thing? Never will you ever see a woman perform a blowjob.
Bring back blowjobs.
No, it's just about this, like, never be submissive. Never, it is disgusting to be a stay-at-home mom. You need to do a career. You need to be strong, and you don't need men. Look at the Barbie movie. It is the most disgusting propaganda that you can watch. Once you see through that, it is so absurd that they shame women to be mothers and to like only want to be with their children, and they create this like they want to, but it is celebrated if you're stay-at-home dad. It makes no sense. It is completely absurd, and it destroys the modern family, and it has now people are confused.
Yeah.
And like, this is not to shit on the LGB. This is more like, and even I know a lot of like my friends, gay friends, that have problems with this, like pushing this agenda on children. They don't fuck with that, and they never ask for that, or you know. And there's this craziness happening. And like your ex, like I don't know if like she's crazy confused, but have you heard of this? Like this is crazy conspiracy, but about this like water they gave frogs. Kennedy was talking about this tap water that turned the frogs gay and turned them like they all produced eggs at some point, and like so you really got to question yourself, like why did they want to take away so much from you just following your path of your nature and like you being so celebrated when you're like, I'm gay, everybody's like cheering and they're like, I don't want children, and like I'm gonna like tap into my like gay side now, like
so weird,
you know, and like it really makes you wonder why. But there's a huge decline on reproduction, and I think that all goes down to that having a family changes everything. It really does.
Yeah, I was shocked when I fully realized that all of this liberal wokeism agenda the past 50 years was just secretly getting us to stop producing babies.
Yes.
Like I was like, whoa, like that's it. Like, you know, like I thought it was like, oh, it's Satan, the Antichrist, or they're trying to like shove us into, you know, a slave state. Like, no, it's way more simple than that. They're doing all of this simply to get us to stop having babies. And I see that in my own life. I'm the youngest of four. Out of us four, I'm the youngest. I'm going to be 30 next year, right? So out of us, we're all basically 30-year-olds. Out of us 4 30-year-olds, only one of us has a kid, my oldest brother. And he only has one, and that's the whole thing. So like that's crazy. All of my uncles, my aunts, they all had babies by my age. They had 3 or 4, right? And I see this all in all my friends, and none of my close friends, or actually no, some of them, but like very few of my close friends and family my age have babies. And shit, my fucking ex-wife went lesbian, dude. You know? And so, I'm on the dating apps, and it's funny how like I'm on the dating apps, and like 9 out of 10 women on there don't want kids, don't want kids, don't want kids. So I finally realized, like, wow, all of this that's happening in the world right now, all of this craziness is disguised as political, social agendas is really just there to get us to stop having babies.
And they already have a solution with all the jobs being replaced by AI and robots. So it's not going to be a problem at all, because all the cars just going to drive itself. The Amazon is going to come with a drone, and they already got it all figured out.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
It's not going to be a problem that like you don't have workers anymore.
That's what I'm saying, man.
But Elon is warning. This is the biggest warning he's trying to do, is that like you gotta have kids. Like
just pump them out. No, I'm serious, man.
And why is it that God makes women be able to get pregnant with like freaking 13, 14, 15 years old? Why? And why can they not get pregnant anymore when they're 40?
Huh.
Because maybe you're not supposed to be pregnant when you're 40. They're doing these crazy injections, and like I know that like obviously I would love every woman to be a mother, but you shouldn't be waiting until you're 40.
Oh, dude, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
Because like imagine, I've been talking about this before. When you get a baby and you're 15 years old, back in the day, right? Your mother would help you raise that child. Maybe the whole village would help.
Yeah.
When you're like 12 and you get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Everybody would help, because you're not capable of raising this child by yourself, right?
Yeah.
And your mother would maybe still be young. Maybe she also gave birth at 15, and maybe you and your mom like are closer than ever and not like 40 years apart, right? Because otherwise you grow up with your grandparents. Your parents are both like white hair and can barely walk. Everything hurts, and you're like a toddler. This is what's happening when I bring my child to school. I see grandparents with their child. And not only that, they pass down the trauma that they have had, the frustration, the anger, the pain. They are so frustrated with life, and like, and what do? They just put them in daycare or as far away as possible. They don't spend much time with them because they can't. They're too tired. Or they gotta work.
Yeah.
And then they have one anyways, and you don't have any siblings, and before you know it, this baby is isolated.
Yeah.
And grows up in this kind of environment. And I get why people are like, oh, I don't want to put a child in this world. But like, what else are you going to do? Nothing matters. You're going to be forgotten. Everything we talk about, nobody is going to care. You don't play that much of a role, but you need to reproduce, and you need...
So what are your thoughts on like adoption? Is that like for people that are that old, like, is that a good alternative, or should they still focus on having their own?
That's a good question. I looked in adoption the other day, and I saw that it costs you like $40,000.
Oh, never mind.
I was like, what the fuck? I thought that was like for free, because you save a child from like an orphanage. I thought like, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I thought. That's what 40,000. I thought maybe a few hundred.
No,
clerical documents or whatever.
Google says it's $30,000 to $70,000. I just looked this up yesterday. So
a kid is named that kid Lambo. Like,
so
what up, Lambo?
So it's more like and also that seems like a whole nother business now. That like once you look into that, you're like, oh, this is orphanage is like a business. What is going on?
That's
like,
messed up.
I haven't looked into it further, but I just don't believe God, our Creator, wanted us to raise children old. I don't believe that. I feel like, I like what the Greeks did, like where you're like, you have a certain period in your life where you should be a warrior.
Yeah.
You have a certain period of your life where you should be teaching the new generation what you have learned.
Yeah.
I don't know it. You know how they have like different sectors.
Yeah.
You become, once you get older, you surround yourself with like, you become like
Yeah, I know what
a
you're talking
philosopher,
about.
and
I
then
forgot the succession of the positions, but yeah.
but it seems very beautifully created, and now we're just isolated, trying to raise children by our own, and like freezing our eggs, and it just seems
Gosh.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, man. Like, if we do end up going to that like Book of Revelations, New World Order future, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be this weird AI, smart city integrated world where we're probably going to have babies being born in embryos. I mean, they're already working on that. They're already achieving that at its pioneering stages. They're already figuring out how to grow a human baby. And so they're scratching their heads right now trying to figure out, okay, how do we do away with most of the population, and how do we get them to stop reproducing so they don't produce any more conscious, aware people, and just produce our own Walmart factory babies to be the workers. Like, they're really scratching their heads right now trying to figure that whole thing out. And they're going to figure it out, unfortunately. But as we were saying, and as the Bible says, it's going to swing back on them. And I feel like ultimately that is like the mythological tale of Jesus and the second coming. It's like it is going to become this beast state of like gnarly, just again, AI world, but it's going to swing back, and then Jesus, or the human spirit, if you will, is going to come back alive and say, fuck that. I want to go start a fire and fuck in the forest. You know, so it sucks. It seems as if we're going to have to go through that. Like, maybe we're going to have to go through that to finally realize, like, oh, like, no, we want to be human. We want to be children of the stars, you know? Because right now we're like too focused right here. We're forgetting there's a whole entire universe around us that we could go explore and populate, you know? But yeah, man, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to go through that. But we still have a chance right now, you know? We still have a chance right now to spread those seeds, literally spread those seeds, have those babies, and teach them the old ways. Because as long as the old ways are around and people remember the old ways and what it means to be a human, they can't ever fully lock in that new world order.
I agree.
Yeah.
Man, it was really, really, really cool to talk to you.
Likewise, man. This was fun.
Man, really nice to meet you, Eddie. And yeah, I think I took a lot with me, and I'm really, really excited, like, you know, what you're gonna explore next.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I had a great time. Yeah, I'm always working on stuff, for sure. I'll definitely be around. You're not too far from me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thanks to everybody listening. If I can, just want to plug in some things real quick.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, thanks to everybody listening. You know, just remember, you are sovereign. If you're listening to this, you still have a chance to make it in this life and be whatever you want to be. But you can find me on Instagram at Esoteric Eddie. You can find my videos on YouTube at Esoteric Eddie TV, and everything else on my website, esotericeddie.com.
Amazing. And how do we get your books?
You can find my books on my website. Yep, I got 3 of them on there. But you pretty much just get them on Amazon. You can go through my website, and then it takes you to Amazon.
Are they audible too?
No, not yet. Working on that.
And
But
you got a great voice. I think you should. Joe Rogan always says that you should narrate it yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
But all 3 of my books have documentary versions on my YouTube channel. Okay. So if you're not ready to buy the book, you can watch the documentary version on my channel for free.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, a little support is nice.
Yeah.
But you should do audio, because I don't read. And I think most people don't. I listen to most of the information that I can. Because I have a kid and shit is crazy, but it's hard to sit down physically. But I would love to have an audio version.
Sure. Yeah.
It's so cool to have an audio version of your book.
Yeah, I know. People keep asking me. I got to do it. Yeah. I'll do it. I'll do it for you, man.
Okay. Yay. That's it.